Welcome to Superhero Stuff You Should Know. This is the fastest Ben alive, and with me, as usual, is...
Drew Barry Less.
And we have a guest with us from the Speed Force, Andy B. from the Flash Podcast. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. How's everyone doing today?
Pretty good. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, doing great. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you're doing the Lord's work and covering all these DC TV shows on your shows, and so, I'm grateful to you. You gave us a shout out on your show, linked over the episodes we did on, the different Flash projects, and you had a great episode with Craig Byrne on the different Flash projects as well. And so this is kind of a nice little sequel to our series and to your episode too, where you guys didn't really get to cover in detail the way we did, or we're about to with this the script that we're covering. So it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it. I'm a huge fan of like lost media things. So when I stumbled upon your podcast, I think it was last year, because I was looking for like old like Darren Aronofsky Batman stuff, and I found all your videos. I'm like, oh, this is good, because I also like pictures when I'm watching stuff. From there I was hooked. So when I was doing that episode, I was like, we can't cover all of this in like 1 or 2 hours. So I will do like a summary of what they said, but make sure people go and watch the full episodes. And because I had a friend who was like, the Flash almost fought aliens. I'm like, I know. So yeah, it was nuts. Yeah. I mean, it would have. For the 80s, that would have been something, because it probably would have just been practical suits anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would have had to.
So I know Drew has a few questions. So let's sort of give Andy a bit of an intro.
Yeah, so could you just intro your podcast real quick again for everybody?
Sure, yes. My podcast is the Flash Podcast. It's been operating since December 2013, and it's been mainly focused on the Flash TV show on the CW, with Grant Gustin as Barry Allen. And of course, we've weaved in the Arrowverse throughout that, and throughout the run, we've done interviews, we've done reviews of comics, and talked about other DC media. And now we're getting ready to say goodbye to our Fastest Men Alive on the CW very, very soon. So it's very bittersweet.
So you were able to score the name The Flash Podcast.
Yes, a lot. A lot of people have asked me this over the years. So what happened was the day it got announced, the spin-off show was in development. It was, I remember clear as day, July 30th, 2013. I've been wanting to get into DC podcasting for a while, but like Arrow was kind of already running, and I had some friends who already did their own podcasts. So I didn't want to, step on their toes. We, the big primary one, Quiver, we actually became good friends over the, later in the years and worked together. So, but I was like, I want to start fresh from whenever a new show was announced. So when the Flash got revealed to be in the works, I'm like, I feel this is the right thing. So I just ran to Twitter and just scored at. I was surprised that the Flash Podcast Twitter account was even around, because I'm like, really? No one like in however long Twitter had existed at that point, Twitter, no one has snagged it. And then I'm like, well, it surely can't be available on Facebook or Instagram or the website name. And I'm like, what the hell? Has no one been interested to talk about the Flash? Because I saw there were other Flash podcasts on like iTunes and so on. But I'm like, okay, I guess I was very, very lucky. I don't know how it happened. I guess some people were just like, nah, who needs a website? I don't know. It was 2013. Things were a little bit different back then.
Okay. And so you were just mainly a fan of the DC CW shows, or were you a fan of The Flash before the show came out?
I was always a big DC fan growing up, but The Flash, I will admit that besides Justice League Unlimited and just the Justice League cartoons, I didn't really have any association with the Flash. I'd seen, because I grew up with Smallville, so we saw Bart Allen, but the name Barry Allen and Jay Garrick didn't mean much to me. I was like, when they said Wally West, I'm like, oh, I know Wally West is because he's on that cartoon show that I grew up with. But this really became like a lesson and journey for me, as I wanted to use my podcast to educate people about the Flash. As I was learning about the Flash, I brought on like guests who knew tons of things about the Flash throughout what I called my season 0 about, all the villains, some of the big comic book arcs. So I was learning along with the listeners, which was actually pretty cool. So now I'm a huge Flash fan. Like pretty much like when people give me gifts and so on, it's either Flash stuff or just boring clothes.
So the Flash is probably your favorite DC hero at this point.
It's tied with Superman for sure.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it always gets awkward when people are like, "So who's fastest?" I'm like, I have to pick the Flash because there's no way Superman or any Kryptonian would defeat a speedster. That's what they do. That's their thing. That's their speed. So, but yeah, it's a toss up between those two. Yeah.
Okay. And my final question before we really get into it: top 3 Flash comics recommendations.
Flashpoint obviously, and I wouldn't start with Flashpoint because that's very emotionally draining. But then again, the Flash Rebirth which that was officially my first Flash comic I ever got into. I kind of started in the middle of the journey. I'm like, oh wow, like there's this entire history behind Barry's death and everything. And for my third one, I think this one is kind of underrated. I grew up with a lot of the Jeff Johns, Mark Waid things during my research, but the third one would be The Dastardly Death of the Rogues, which is a very unique story, I think.
Okay, awesome. All
I
right.
haven't read that one.
Cool.
I just finished the Return of Barry Allen, which is really solid. The Mark Waid one. So that one.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's a good one.
The Waid stuff is lives up to the reputation.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So that's good. So, like we've talked about, it's been a big year for The Flash. We got the movie coming out next month, and the final season of the CW show with the big finale premiering the week that this premieres. So, Andy's been extensively covering this on the Flash podcast, and it felt like it's best for us to time this to cover the CW show's origins as a movie. So, we've covered the Flash scripts by Jim Strain and Todd Holland in 1987 with the Aliens, David Goyers, and then Chris Brancato. So now we're diving into the Flash script from February 2011. And the writers behind this were, of course, Greg Berlanti, Michael Green, and Marc Guggenheim, with Berlanti and Guggenheim going on to write the script together as well as be part of the eventual Arrowverse on the CW. So, but before all that, some background. Before this script, Berlanti, before Berlanti gave us the multiverse across the CW and HBO Max and CBS for like one season, he, Michael Green, and Marc Guggenheim wrote the original drafts for the 2011 Green Lantern movie, starring Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan. And I know people have always said this was the first attempt at like launching a cinematic universe for DC, before Man of Steel. And I always wondered, is that actually true? And this script actually does prove that was the case. This was a Flash script written after they had finished writing Green Lantern, but before Green Lantern was released, and the intention was that they were going to be part of the same universe. And I can only presume that, given the reception of Green Lantern, this Flash one was pulled. But it came back in some form on the CW, turned into a TV show, and as Andy and I discovered when we read this script, there's a lot of CW Flash in this. I think you told me beforehand that, Andy, that it almost feels like they just kind of melded 5 episodes together of the first season.
That first season was awesome, though. I mean, I can see why they did that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I understand you have more time to do when you have 23 episodes of a season versus 2 hours of a movie, but it just struck as very funny to me. I'm like, oh wow, like they really did borrow from each other, or Greg at least did, because because I don't know why Mark never went on to the Flash. I guess he kind of just got the Shepherd Arrow by himself by the time Berlanti went to the Flash.
Mm-hmm. Seems like it. Or he's just busy with those Felicity stories or something. But anyway, I think
you said it. I didn't, because that fandom hates me with a passion. So I'm just gonna sit here and zip.
Yep. All right. Well, as you do that, the David Goyer and Chris Brancato scripts did have Wally West in them. However, this was written after Flash Rebirth, after Final Crisis, when Barry Allen comes back, and Jeff Johns kind of came in with the retcon that his mother was murdered and his father was framed for the death of his mother. So this is brought back to Barry Allen, and for the first time in an adaptation, they bring up the idea that his mother was murdered when he was young and his father was framed for it. So let's start with what happens in the script. So much like the CW series pilot, we open with a voiceover from Barry Allen talking about his speed over a montage of him going around Central City and saving people. Barry is not in the Flash suit yet at this point. It's still early in his career, but he does say in the narration that he's an eye blink, a sunburst, a flash. So eventually he witnesses an explosion, hears screams inside, and goes to, try to rescue who he can, only to find that the screams are just a recording. It's actually a trap. So the floor collapses under him, and we cut to 2 weeks earlier, where Barry Allen is just a CSI with no superpowers yet. Again, this is kind of similar structurally to the Goyer script. There's a lot actually from Goyer's script in here in terms of just parallels or some structure stuff that I'll go into. But much like the Goyer one, we sort of have an opening voiceover flashing back to the past after this sort of opening flash forward. So Barry's introduced as a CSI. He visits a woman whose husband was killed in a bombing years ago, but the bomber was never caught. But Barry is still obsessed with trying to solve as many cases as he can, even ones that are 7 years old. So he even asks this widow if he can, exhume the body for more evidence. The widow gets mad and tells him to leave because she's not down for that. But it establishes Barry's character pretty well, I think. Barry then gets called to a crime scene on the river, which is where we get to meet Barry's boss, Fred Trier from the comics, who is pictured here from the CW pilot on the right, played by Al Sapienza. So he did make it into the TV show. At the crime scene, a Jane Doe has washed up with no signs of how she died exactly, but Barry knows the tide well enough to identify that she wasn't killed in the neighboring city of Keystone, but was rather killed here. So far, so good on this, but I think the first element of real DNA that carries over in the CW show is with some elements of Iris, and I'm sure you might have noticed this too, Andy, the fact that, in the CW show and in this version, Iris is Barry's childhood friend, and her family took him in to raise him after the death of his mom. So that seems like a Berlanti idea, because that's not in the Silver Age comics or the other stuff. They kind of have this whole he's in love with her thing, but they're kind of under the guise of being best friends. Again, this is all stuff that's sort of carried over. So that's interesting to see from the get-go here. She and Barry go to dinner, and he finds out that she's lost her job as a newspaper reporter since the paper that she's been working for has gone under. It's the age of, blogs and stuff. So say goodbye to newspapers, but that's the end of the Central Citizen, which, again, interesting, the Central City Citizen title does make it into the CW show as the paper that Iris owns. So, again, like more connections. But when you got to this part, Andy, how did you feel about seeing the early version of Iris?
Yeah, I mean, it very much screamed what they ended up doing with her on the show. Which, for the record, Iris is one of my absolute favorite characters on the last show. So it was just funny to see like how many ideas that Berlanti had from all the way back in 2000. Was it 10 or 11?
11. Yeah, it's 11.
11.
Yeah, because it's right before the Green Lantern release.
Yeah, so it was very funny that there was so many similarities of at least the idea of, because they're very much leaning in, even though they never say it in the script, I guess they're very much leaning into the lightning rod concept that Barry really loves her. And, so for me as a West Allen fan, I'm just sitting there being like, oh my God, this is so cute. So I thought it was adorable. But it's all, the biggest difference, I guess, is that because they don't have as many characters in the film as they have on the show, there's more for Iris to do here, which I feel, sometimes bad for the TV version, because I do think other characters have overshadowed her. So just seeing this, I'm just like, oh man, if we just weren't so obsessed with having like Team Flash, like this, there's so much they could have done. But very much like when I kept reading this, I kept seeing these two all the time. Like the script reads very much like something almost like it was written for Grant before he was even discovered as an actor. So
yeah, it's hard not to picture the CW cast and the characters who end up here, just because it's like, it's the same, it's the same writers more or less, and the same type of characterization. So it's tough not to see that. I can't blame you, because I was picturing the same thing. Here, we're still seeing him as Barry and her as Iris, and some of the other characters who show up here, and even some cross ones who are like, well, the character didn't show up, but clearly this character is a template for this other one, and we'll go into that in a bit. But it's really interesting to take a look at this. But yeah, that evening, Barry is looking at the Jane Doe and deduces that she could have died by being exposed to extremely cold temperatures. So that's a nice little clue there. But he tries to. It's not Mr. Freeze, everyone.
It's not subtle.
It's not subtle at all. No,
And it's not Killer Frost or Chillblaine, thank God.
it's not Chillblaine.
What's the guy's name? Chill Blaine?
Okay, Andy, go into Chillblaine, please.
Okay.
How many freezing guys does he have?
Well, Chillblaine is like a minor Flash villain from the comics who, yes, he's a cold person as well, but they had to kind of, when they couldn't get Captain Cold anymore, they had to kind of like bring in someone else. But essentially right now, this season, he has been like one of the two characters that people hate the absolute most. He's just there to progress his, because he's upset that Killer Frost is dead, and he's made some choices, to say the least. I used to like him because he's hot. This man never wears a shirt.
This guy's ass showing from under his jacket.
So it's somehow this man in Vancouver, because this show is filmed in Vancouver, and he's like running out there with his jacket open, no shirt. I'm like, the hell? Did I just do something wrong? Like, are we supposed to be able to walk in cold weather with just a cheap leather jacket, if I have to be honest? But we still don't know how this fool came up with the name Chillblaine. It's definitely not Cisco proved. It's just he just proudly says, "But you can call me Chillblaine," and I'm like, why would you name yourself that? So that's Chillblaine.
Yeah,
hot and annoying.
He's thankfully not in this.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Got it.
Andrew's glad he jumped off.
Yeah.
The show.
I jumped off many seasons ago.
Would you believe me if I told you that the first time we see him, we properly see him, when he has his big first scene is him taking off his shirt, and they literally play "It's Hot in Here."
I heard about this.
Would you? I mean, again, I laughed because that was a song that was playing in my head when I first saw him. So when the episode started playing, I'm like, okay, this is creepy, because this was just in my head. But like, that is his like infamous intro scene, because he and Frost, they have like a showdown in the bar, and he helps her, and then he gets somehow wet from beer. I don't know how it happened, but then he has to take off his shirt, and that 2000 early song plays. I'm like, this. As gorgeous, but also it's freaky because this was in my mind this whole time. But that's you may have jumped off at the right point.
Yeah, it's what it seems like.
Yes.
You see, he's a chill guy, but he's playing, and it's getting hot in here. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
Irony.
It's multi-layered.
If I went back and watched those last two seasons, I'm sure he made some ice puns that I've just like suppressed, because he's just so annoying right now. I'm just like, I don't even want to think about him. So again, I love the show, but there are some things to make fun of with it.
There's always a fine line between like trying to do that really, I don't know, like good kind of cheese. And then it can go very easily into the bad kind of cheese, and it's kind of subjective too, of course. But I don't know. There's probably some sort of consensus you could get to where you can kind of mainly stay at the good kind of cheese, like the first season, etc.
Cheese. He's like expired cheese.
Yeah, that's expired cheese. Yeah,
for sure. All right, well, we'll move on from the expired cheese before Andy blows a gasket about Chillblaine. But
he's gonna blow a gasket.
He decides, hey, I'm going to basically continue investigating this Jane Doe who died of these cold temperatures. So he talks to his boss, Chire, who doesn't seem like a very good cop because he always is shooting down Barry's theories, even though Barry is right. And so he doesn't want Barry to test his theory that more than one person has died from these cold temperatures. So Barry decides he's going to sneak into Star Labs to use their spectrometer in order to test his theory. And while he's there, he hears about the Star Labs particle accelerator built by the founder of Star Labs, Dr. Eobard Thawne. So this is definitely something that carried over into the CW show. Thawne being the one in charge of Star Labs and having a particle accelerator, that's definitely all unique to the Berlanti vision that's in the CW show, not in the comics. And then the particle accelerator itself plays a role in Barry's origin, as well as the origin of all the metahumans in the CW show. Plays a different role here for the third act, but one of the interesting things that I'm sure jumped out at you too when reading this, Andy, was the fact that Thawne is he's just flat out called Eobard Thawne from the beginning. There's no attempt to disguise it. Whereas in the Arrowverse, they kind of do this thing where they know viewers are either comic fans who know the secret identities or have easy access to Google at least and can just look this shit up. But they often change the character names and have them as like red herrings so that you don't immediately think they're them. So for most of season 1, the villain was Dr. Harrison Wells, who was really Eobard Thawne in disguise, who took over the appearance of Dr. Harrison Wells and stuff, which then leads into whole other complications of more than one person playing Reverse Flash, but we'll go into that later. But it kept the mystery going, for sure, on that. And I kind of like that they did that, even though kind of by the time they started doing that too in Superman and Lois, I was kind of getting a little bit more, it was getting a little bit predictable of like, this person's not really this person on that. But, oh well. But Barry's at Star Labs when he gets caught by a Star Labs doctor named Valerie Perez, who kicks him out. But Barry sort of challenges her and guilts her into the fact that she's not helping him cut down on Central City's, high unsolved murder rate, because apparently it's got the highest unsolved homicide rate in the country. So Valerie kind of feels guilty and decides to help him out a little later. But
higher
Barry
than
realizes,
Gotham?
Yeah,
that is not mentioned, but I would imagine maybe their unsolved rate is lowered thanks to Batman.
Oh,
And,
that's a good little point there. Yeah.
Because he says unsolved. He doesn't say murder rate. He just says unsolved. So
right.
it could be
Cold
that.
cases. Gotham,
Yes.
cold case. No, wait. Flash, cold case. It gets back to the fucking cold theme. Anyway, keep going.
It does. It does. Barry realizes he's late for Iris's party, which is revealed to be an engagement party because, again, foreshadowing of the CW show, Iris does not start out being with Barry. She is with somebody else. It is a man named Nathan Newberry. But in the CW show, it was Eddie Thawne. And I don't know about you, Andy, but I basically pictured Eddie Thawne the whole time when I was reading this. And I guess he's British too. It sounded like he has a British accent. I don't know, but that's what it seemed like. He's not a huge character. He does actually come from the Flash comics, from when I Googled it, but he's like a minor character. He's like a minor pull from that.
I was laughing at the fact that, so I had to be punished here too by them being apart for like some random love interest reason. I'm like, really, Greg? Really? even in the 2010s, this is what you could come under? I wasn't picturing Eddie, but yeah, I can see what
or at least Rick
why
Fosnett.
Who's actually now back on the Flash, which it's pretty exciting.
I'm interested to see. Everybody wanted him back as Cobalt Blue, so I'm just like, all right, you finally get your wish in the last 4 episodes.
Yes, the final graphic novel.
It's enough.
We'll give him just enough.
It's enough.
While there at the engagement party, there's a 10-year-old boy who calls out Barry for staring creepily at Iris and catches on to the fact that Barry has a crush on her. This, of course, is young Wally West, who is preserved as Iris's nephew here, just like in the comics, whereas in the show, it kind of made more sense for that context for it to be Iris's long-lost brother. So they changed things around, but it did look like they stayed true, at least to the comics in this version of stuff. So Barry and Iris have that awkward moment that happens whenever the love interest is with someone else, where Barry pretends to be happy for her, but he really isn't. And he returns to his lab where he discovers that Valerie from Star Labs has given him the data he needs to confirm that his Jane Doe was murdered by extreme colds. So now he knows that some cold killer is out there, But before he can investigate that, he, of course, gets struck by lightning, like in the Flash origin. So during his coma, we get flashbacks to his childhood and find out, like in the comics and in the CW show, that Nora Allen was murdered after being stabbed to death, and Barry's dad, Henry, was arrested for it. But what's also cool here is we get some flash forwards, too, during this time, because I guess he's connected to the Speed Force. So some lines that will be said later in the script get overheard, or he sort of experiences the future a little bit in here, which is kind of reminded me of the opening of season 4, where Barry comes back from the Speed Force and he says a bunch of random lines that would later be said in the season. So like that was kind of another thing that sort of carries over into the show, I felt. But Barry wakes up in present day and finds that he sees time differently. He sees things slowing down around him. Again, this feels very much like the Goyer script we've talked about, where he sees things a little differently. And lo and behold, a Star Lab scientist comes to pull him out of the hospital. And here, it's Eobard Thawne. So he says only Star Labs knows how to take care of him, and they're discharging him from the hospital. And like in the CW show, Dr. Thawne is pretending to be in a wheelchair. In this script, he claims he's needed it all his life. I guess they were trying to convey some sort of Stephen Hawking type of thing in it, because I forgot the disease he mentions in it, but he mentions having it might have been muscular dystrophy or something like that. But in the CW show, he was just pretending he was paralyzed from the particle accelerator explosion. All this, of course, in the very complicated way, is probably inspired by Hunter Zolomon, who's not the Reverse Flash, but he's Zoom, who's in a wheelchair. It's all complicated. But anyway,
Yes.
Hunter Zolomon, not Reverse Flash, but Zoom. Not the Professor Zoom, but Zoom. Was in a wheelchair in the David Goyer script, except in
It's
there,
easy, kids.
yeah, he was legitimately handicapped before he got his powers. So yeah.
Don't you want to read American comics and not all that manga?
So Reverse Flash is Professor Zoom, who inspires Zoom, who gets paralyzed, which then inspires the version of Reverse Flash, who's not called Professor Zoom, in the CW show. Got it? Good. Okay. So
Perfect.
Dr. Thawne helps stabilize Barry at Star Labs and introduces him to his team of scientists, which is basically a prototype Team Flash for the show, except with less memorable characterizations, I felt. There's no Cisco, no Caitlin. It's Thawne himself. We get Murray Takamoto, who serves as Barry's personal physician, but he's in the comics, but in Blue Beetle comics. So I guess this is an early version of them pulling comic book characters, but who aren't specifically from Flash comics, but from overall DC comics. And Cisco is like part of Justice League Detroit or something, and Killer Frost was from the Firestorm comics. So.
Well, even then, Caitlin wasn't even created back then. She, because then we only had Crystal and Louise. So, because Caitlin came in, I should know this because my friend created her. 2014, I think, 2015, 2014, something like that.
Was there some sort of synergy then with the show where they're just like, hey, like we're introducing this character, Greg, you should put her in, that type of thing?
No. I don't know if that was the case. I mean, I know that she debuted, like she got named Caitlin Snow in, like, I think it was like when they were doing those like Justice League villain like cover issues. But it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if there was kind of like, hey, do you need some type of like doctor character or something? But but it could also be that they were already thinking about using Firestorm, so like, well, why don't we just find a way to tie in Killer Frost? So
yeah, that could be it too. Because I guess they could have used the other two characters who are from the Flash comics, just not from Barry's time on it. So this was interesting.
So Killer Frost existed first, right? And then they made Caitlin Killer Frost. Correct?
They made the fur Caitlin, the fur Killer Frost in 2014. So there's been a lot of Killer Frost in that. It's like a legacy title almost. But I think that Caitlin character is more connected to Firestorm somehow, maybe than the other twos. Because in the show, obviously there's a connection between Ronnie and Caitlin, and I think that's why they were like, well, let's use this Killer Frost as opposed to Crystal or Louise.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I got it. Makes sense. I think Killer Frost's pretty cool. I think I could see more of.
Was that a pun?
Yeah.
Oh.
More of her in the future in some form or fashion.
Well, now it's Keone. But anyway, there's.
Oh, don't start. Don't start.
She's gone? That actress is gone? The original Caitlyn?
Oh, no, she's
no,
there.
no, she's still there. She's still there.
Basically, Andrew, it's another Wells thing.
Oh, again?
Yeah.
Oh, no, she's the goddess.
She's a goddess?
I'm saying it's another Wells thing, as in, like, they're back, but playing another character.
Oh, okay. Got it.
We're still, we are 11 episodes in, we're still not sure how using like a cryo chamber, because she was trying to, because Killer Frost, I'm sorry, but Killer Frost is dead. She died against Deathstorm, who was actually pretty cool on the show, because he looked exactly like the one from the comic, but I love that I just get to throw all these weird ass flashbacks on people who have not watched the shows. Well, no, but I have so much fun with it because I'm like, I have to try and find a natural way to explain it. So Caitlyn gets grieving and she's all sad and she's like, I want to bring Frost back because she's like my sister somehow. So she goes all like mad scientist and tries to like she literally during the funeral she takes a piece of Frost's hair and then tries to recreate her DNA somehow within her in a chamber, and then somehow comes out as Keone, who turns out that she's a goddess, and we don't really know if Caitlyn is dead or not, but the team has kind of just accepted it, because literally, I kid you not, they were voting between, do we bring back Caitlyn, or do we bring back Frost, in the second episode of season 9, and then they just accept, you know what, Keone should get to make her own choice, and then they literally, 5 minutes later, they literally go and dance at a club.
My friend's dead, but let's dance with her replacement.
And I asked Daniel Panabaker, was there a scene between accepting her death to them dancing where they actually, these mother effers agreed? And she was like, she was very, very diplomatic. She was like, well, one of the things when you're an actor on the show is that you don't get to write it. And no, she was super sweet about it. I love Daniel Panabaker, but she was like, yeah, there was no scene.
Okay, got it.
It sounds like this was not her choice in general.
Yeah, no, it sounded like because they went into season 9 thinking that there was a potential chance of them getting a 10th season. So I think Eric Wallace, the current showrunner, was imagining doing this Keone storyline across 2 seasons, and then the new leaders of the CW, they decided to be like, no, I think we're done here. I think it was a mutual decision, but I think by that point they were like, crap, we're kind of like now in the midst of this writing, and but yeah, she's a goddess.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well,
I'm glad she's nice though.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. Back to it.
Prototype Team Flash, but without the charisma. We got Dr. Jerry McGee. Chief particle physicist, who was also in David Goyer's script. He's known as the scientist and husband to Tina McGee, as well as another speedster villain in the comics. But that's from the Wally West era. So that's another thing of Barry taking something from Wally. And then there's no Tina McGee here. There's no Caitlyn. Instead, there's Valerie from earlier, Valerie Perez, who is Bart Allen's love interest in the comics. So again, it's also like when they brought in Linda Park to be Barry's girlfriend in the early seasons too. It was just kind of just recycling or just passing along the love interests across the generations here. But
does he have this hairstyle?
We don't talk about it.
Does he have this hairstyle in the script? This middle guy?
It does not. He does not. It's just in the comics because in the comic he's experimenting shit on himself because he's just like, you're in love with the speedster? Well, fuck, I'm going to become a speedster. So he does experiments on himself that lead him to go bald like this.
Got like a Franciscan monk, what they call the tonsure hairstyle, like shaved in the middle there.
That is the Jerry McGee hairstyle. I'm sure when they brought the carrot, if they were going to do this movie, he would not have that hairstyle.
I hope not. I hope not, because I don't know any one actor would want to shave their head just for that.
He's like, kill me now. But it's true to the comics. So
we're not doing that part, buddy.
This is this is kind of the original Team Flash, but they just don't have the nice, chemistry or characterizations that we get in the actual show when it was Cisco, Caitlyn, and at least the early Team Flash. So they all test Barry's ability. So once again, we get a montage that we get in other stuff. Barry dons, basically goes onto the track, outruns a car, tests out his healing abilities, needs a ton of energy, so he has to eat a ton of calories. All the stuff that we've seen in the other scripts and stuff you kind of have to just establish for the Flash. But at one point, Barry sees that there's a tornado, and he goes off to stop it by running against it. He initially fails, but he sees that there's a family trapped in a car and about to get killed by the tornado. So, of course, he goes faster, tightens the circle around it, and is able to unwind the tornado. This is something probably out of Born to Run, where Wally West did it, as pictured here, and that's in the Chris Marcano script towards the end, as well as what Barry does in the pilot for the CW show against the first Weather Wizard. So another thing that carries over into the actual show. In the meantime, Barry shows evidence that he discovered that this Jane Doe who died from the freezing temperatures, there's a whole pattern of people. There's a serial killer, a cold serial killer on the loose. So he tells his boss about it. Chire eats his words and decides, all right, Barry was right. There's somebody out there freezing people to death. So he goes on not national television, but he goes on TV to call out the serial killer. Barry doesn't think that's a good idea. And Barry, once again, is right. Chire's an idiot. So Chire gets kidnapped by a serial killer, Leonard Snart, who in the comics is, surprise, surprise, Captain Cold. Except here, he's not called Captain Cold. Instead, he's Dark Edgelord, realistic serial killer version of Captain Cold for worse, I think. But he uses a syringe to inject Chire with a chemical that makes him freeze to death on television. And so Chire is dead, again, like in the Goyer script and in the CW pilot. Snart then threatens to destroy a major landmark in a few days. And so Barry's boss is dead. Snart, Captain Cold, or Cold as he's going to be called, is announced as the villain, and Barry has his power. So we'll find out what happens next after the break.
It's time for May announcements, everyone!
Indeed. And we have some news. We're going to be in a movie. Yes, a movie. Short film, actually.
Hollywood,
done by our Patreon
baby!
Yeah, we are going Hollywood. So, yes, we're in a movie. It's a short film done by our Patreon patron and longtime supporter, Jeffrey Scott Richards. Jeffrey put us in his documentary called All Right Forever, where we talked about our COVID experiences. You can check that out when you can. But now he's doing something different. Now he's doing a scripted short film, and we're in it. And it's called Derek Magnum. So, the log line is, I'm reading off from his Indiegogo, Derek Magnum is one of the leading directors and creative forces in the superhero genre today. When his wife posthumously publishes a tell-all book about his years of misconduct towards her, he loses everything. Now, years later, he tries to find redemption in the eyes of his 21-year-old son. So, in this short film, Andrew and I will play ourselves, hosting Superhero Stuff You Should Know and discussing Derek Magnum. We're excited, but Jeffrey could use your help on the production with festival and marketing costs, feeding the main actors, not us, we're good, but the main actors involved, like the guy who's actually playing Derek Magnum, and paying the composer for us. So head on over to indiegogo.com/project/Derek, that's DERRICK, -magnum-a-short-film-by-Richard Scott J, hashtag.
So
that's a long one.
The link is
click the link in the damn description.
The link is on the description, and then it's also, we got a visual of it here on the visual for the podcast on the YouTube. So check it out there. Yeah, so I obviously have experience with Indiegogo. I'm in a recon and et cetera, and support the arts, y'all. This is how you do it. Support a fellow fan of all the stuff that we're a fan of, and let's get this film off the ground. We needs to pay his crew and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Again, it goes to the crew. It goes to helping out festival costs and stuff. Like we are just in it. Like, this money does not go to us. This is to help Jeffrey. So anything that you can, over to the Indiegogo link that I will not repeat. Just click the damn link in the description, and it'll take you there. So. Thank you, everyone. In terms of other projects, just wanted to say thanks again to everyone who supported my first published fiction, Shortcut to Happily Ever After, which was a short story novella published in Metaphorosis magazine in April. It's available to read on the Metaphorosis website, as well as on Kindle and Paperback if you choose to get your own copies and support the magazine. A podcast audio version is available, read by podcast host Matt Gomez, which you can check out on YouTube. And thanks again to those who have heard it on YouTube, because thanks to you and the supporters who've commented, that's Leander Nicholson and Jacob Patrick, Those of you who have heard it, thanks to you, it is the #1 video on the Metaphorosis podcast channel on YouTube.
#1,
so,
y'all.
Thanks again for that. So,
Woo!
and basically, that is it for my own stuff, but we have a May charity drive. Again, we do like to keep these charities related to the people we've covered on the show, and this one is no exception. Peter David is a writer we've brought up on this podcast a few times. We covered his novelization for Batman Forever. We'll likely cover his others at a certain point. And yes, we got to acknowledge we have joked. He's friend of the podcast, Peter David, since he was not so friendly to Andrew over Twitter years ago. But again, we are a superhero podcast, and superheroes believe in compassion. We wouldn't be following in the footsteps of superheroes if we let that get in the way of asking you to help him out. Peter David has been undergoing kidney failure as well as a series of strokes and a heart attack, according to this post on the GoFundMe. Yeah, it sounds pretty rough, and so they are asking his fans for support. So please give that over to GoFundMe.com/F/Peter-David-Fund and help someone out who was part of your childhood. You know, he was definitely a big part of mine and part of a part of the show in some way with the novelizations that he's written that we're bound to cover even more of at some point on this. So that is the May charity drive that we're doing for this one.
Yeah,
And,
go
ahead.
said those comments before back in the day. It was just it's funny we're even going over this, but it was just for fun. It was probably even was just a little Twitter thing, and it was like he might have even just had a bad day that day or something. It wasn't that big of a deal. I just wanted to make some jokes about it for the sake of the podcast.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to make it sound like it was a big deal before we hate him or anything. Like we were just joking,
we obviously
continuing to
don't. We obviously don't. I'm just trying to, just clear the air on that. We're trying to help him out. So there you go. Give him the old superhero stuff you should know bump.
Yep.
So whatever that is, check it out. His GoFundMe will be linked in the description, and if you could throw him some shekels, that would be great. He had major runs. He had really good like the novelizations, right? He did
novelizations. The Aquaman one, obviously, that you had talked to him about.
Yeah,
and
it was like Game of Thrones type of story. It was like It was about Atlantis, and it was a pre-Aquaman thing. It was like the setup, the Aquaman lore a little bit, and it was like Game of Thrones in Atlantis, and it was a pretty cool run. And he also co-created Spider-Man 2099, and so how much money has Marvel made off of that? It's showing up in that, so it's just like, a lot of big hitters there. Not that he needs that for money for a GoFundMe, but just to show you he's been a part of people's lives, So, if you guys could. You could probably, the lowest amount is probably $1, right? If you could just even give $1, that'd be great. And I guess
if all of our YouTube subscribers donated $1, that'd be $3,000 for them.
$3,000,
over
yeah.
3,000,
so
yeah.
over 3,000. So please do what you can, guys. Yeah.
All right, and that is it for the May announcements. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Just wanted to announce that I have a new podcast called Gaming Gaiden. It's about Japanese to English translation. In this first season, it will be 10 episodes each season. If you saw the ranking every Superman video game two-parter we did here on Superhero Stuff You Should Know, you have seen Mike before. So yes, if you like video games, if you've been interested in Japanese ever, we're going to be talking a lot about just Japan in general, Japanese cultural differences as well, and we also are going to have a lot of talk about 90s video game magazines such as Electronic Gaming Monthly, aka EGM. So stay tuned for Gaming Gaiden podcast. It's already out now, y'all. I wanted to tell you about the Patreon.com. Patreon.com/SuperheroStuffPod, and on that you get the $1 tier. You can join the $1 tier, which gets you the shout out on the board, and either visually or orally, or both at times. We want to do the oral for the most part for newer people. And then the $5 tier gets you a whole new show. This show is every Monday, as you well know, and it's free on YouTube and the What's Nots. And The Patreon show is every Friday at the $5 tier mark. You can, if you want, binge us for $5, and there's like 150 episodes, almost 150 at this point, and you can listen to all that content there. Even the stuff that's been released from the vault, none of that has been the full episode as well. So trying to keep our $5 tier people happy. But yeah, check that out. And then our $10 tier gets you all of the above, plus it gets you a monthly meetup show where you meet up with us monthly, and it's like a Zoom-like call, and we have a topic at hand, or sometimes videos we react to and things like that. And that's at the $10 tier. Every tier that you get, like the $5 tier gets you the $1 tier benefits, and the $10 tier gets you the $5 tier benefits and the $1 tier benefits. So check that out at patreon.com/superherostuffpod. We also got the merch, which is Redbubble, superhousepod.redbubble.com, and on Threadless, superherostuffpod.threadless.com. Get your Bin Man and Indeed Wizard mug, shirt, shower curtains, and all the rest artwork by Stephen Santa Cruz. And please send us some audio at superhousepodcast@gmail.com. A bumper would be great. You too can be part of the show. I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. Thunderwolf lives as my other YouTube channel, one of my many YouTube channels. And I have also thunderwolfdrew.com has my whole portfolio in one place except for amanorecon.com. That's AMANORECON.com. And that is an original idea that some friends and I are doing, where it is R-rated Power Rangers meets Stranger Things. That's the quick pitch, and it is not a fan film, original idea. We have a pitch video right now on YouTube and on the Indiegogo page. We're campaigning right now as of this, when this episode premieres. And this poster art is by ZacharyJacksonBrownArt.com. And check it out. Please support us on the campaign. And more from that soon. But yes, it's bloody, and if you like that kind of thing, check us out. And that's it, Ben.
Follow us on social media, on Twitter at SuperhousePod, Instagram Superhero Stuff Pod, where we have some different supplemental stuff. I've even analyzed the martial arts stance that the Keaton ornament from The Flash is in, so you can check that out on our Instagram, Superhero Stuff Pod. TikTok, Superhero Stuff Pod, Vero, Superhero Stuff Pod. My website is benwanwriter.com, where you can read a whole bunch of spec scripts, including Gotham, Vampire, Elementary, The Death of Sherlock Holmes, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Disneyland. If you're fans of any of those shows, check them out and let us know what you think. My YouTube channel is in the description below, including Doctor Who, The Ronin of Time, an audio drama I write, edit, and narrate with the 8th Doctor meeting Miyamoto Musashi. My personal Instagram is benwanwriter. If you like cats, my son, Alfie, my cat, is at Alfie Pennyworth Cat. And if you have an Alfie yourself, then you can get the Whisker Box, the only cat box with a crazy cat lady and gent. And you can even check out another page on that website, superherostuffpod.com/show notes. That includes various show notes for each of our episodes, links to the scripts that we review if they're available online, Amazon links to the stuff we've been talking about, including, Brian Levant's book that he plugged for us, My Life and Toys. So check that out at superherostuffpod.com/show notes.
Lord have mercy, y'all. Do you like hounds? Do you enjoy pooches? Do you find yourself enjoying time spent with that of canines? Talking about dogs, y'all.
As you might have heard, Superhero Stuff You Should Know has now teamed up with BarkBox. For every month, you get a box for your special canine.
Pooches.
Or hounds.
That's right. One free extra month if you go to barkbox.com/superherostuffpod.
Follow the link and you'll get a free extra month valued at $35 and valid for all multi-length plans.
So get the BarkBox for your hound, for your pooch, for your canine.
Your doggo will thank you.
Peanut butter and jelly.
And we are back to continue diving into the original Berlanti, Green, and Guggenheim script of The Flash and how it ties into the CW show, and kind of some side tangents on how what happened to the CW show since the last time Andrew saw it. But anyway,
years ago, I saw the first 2 or 3 seasons. I love the first season, though. Just put the disclaimer out there. I loved it. That's why I kept watching. But it's just like, once you get the 50th Wells, I was kind of done.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So Barry and Iris go to Detective Chire's funeral because he got killed by Snart, and afterwards Barry talks to Thawne, who hopes to use his particle accelerator to help Barry access the multiverse. Yep, that shit's in here already in 2011. And to go to a universe where his mother is still alive. So, again, another slight foreshadowing, because, Thawne tempting Barry to go back to where his mother's still alive by using the particle accelerator. That happened in the season 1 finale of the CW show, except, very clear time travel, not necessarily a multiverse thing. But Barry decides he's going to help out with a serial killer crisis involving, his threats to the city. So he meets up with Iris, who's now, like in the CW show, an independent blogger. And she has named Snart the serial killer named Cold. Not Captain Cold, but just Cold.
They thought Captain Cold sounded lame. That's really what this boils down to. But
Cold sounds hardcore.
They could have had, maybe, I know they do this a lot probably, but they could have had, Flash or somebody on Flash's side call him Captain Cold, making fun of him.
Yeah.
And then it starts to stick after that or something. There could have been some way to do that, but yeah, they just thought Captain Cold sounded lame. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
How did you feel about Cold, Andy, in this, especially considering what we ended up actually getting?
I felt the note they had been given was that think Christopher Nolan. And again, I love Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, but I feel like in that trilogy they had to explain everything, why something was the way it was. Why was it called Bane? Why was it called Legal Shadow? Why was it this or this or that? And I felt like with this, they were like, we can't find a reason why we would call him Captain, so we're just gonna call him Cold. But again, if they were going with this very dark edge serial killer aspect, I can understand Cold being a little more intimidating than but they could have done something like Citizen Cold, or I know that's a hero version of Captain Cold in the comic, but that could have been something they could have. I felt there should have been a word in front of Cold, but maybe not Captain. I can understand, because back then, everyone was kind of back in the early 2000s, 2010, everyone was still kind of we do like comics, but we're still kind of ashamed to admit it.
Yeah.
And then Avengers happened. They're like, oh, now we can do anything. Now it's cool to be a comic book nerd. So, but yeah, I agree. I think there should have been something in front of Cold.
Yeah.
How about Cold Blaine?
Andy has left the show.
No? Okay. It was nice having you here.
My soul is left.
I do think it's cool, though, that you see the complete opposite attitude when you get to the actual show, and they're just like, nope, he's called Captain Cold. He's got the fuzzy parka. He's part of the Rogues. They just go, maybe they didn't go, all fully way in, but they go in way more into the Captain Cold and embracing the fact that, yeah, we're doing the comic in the show than they ever did in the script. The fact that he even has the fuzzy parka alone, I championed in 2014 is a major win, considering this is still us coming out of the era of the sort of feeling of being ashamed of comics, or we can't do anything too comic booky, and now post MCU or post Avengers, it was just yeah, fuck it, we'll do it. We'll put him in the fuzzy parka. We'll give him the goggles. We'll call him Captain Cold. I think he even, when he's called that. It's been a while since I've seen that episode, but I think when he's called that, he even smiles. He actually likes the name in the TV show. He doesn't be don't call me that again type of thing. He actually likes it. So there's more of the embracing of the source material in there. So
yeah, we've talked about this before, Andy, but Ben and I, maybe more so me, I don't know, but we sort of think it's lame whenever they are ashamed of their own name or their own suits or whatever in the movies or in the shows. Just get over it. We know what as an audience, we know what we came in for. We don't need these characters to be ashamed of all these comic booky things.
Yeah. The only time I think it's worked is in Guardians when Star-Lord wasn't really ashamed of the name. It was something where they had a meta joke about nobody knowing what it was, and there was an actual poignant reason for it. And then the other one being Rocket becoming Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah, James Gunn sort of killed it.
He knew how to pull that part off. But other things are just like, do we need a joke about Otto Octavius' name? And again, I love No Way Home, but I'm like, we didn't need that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the thing is, like, the Gen Z kids, they would laugh at that name today, whereas I would stand and being like, "Don't you dare mock his name," But yeah, I agree. Like, it was very weird, like in like how like between the 2010s to the late 2000, to the early 2020s, it was kind of even a lot of DC movies were like, I think Wonder Woman was even called Wonder Woman in the first movie, and I don't even know how many times they even said Superman in Man of Steel, which again, Man of Steel is one of my favorite movies. But I'm like, did they even call him Superman more than once? So it's like, yeah, like if you listen, if we can believe that these mother effers can fly in blue suits, dress up like bats or whatever, then it's like, okay, we cannot be ashamed to call them Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, whatever, and so on. Like, heck, even Ezra Miller's Flash wasn't even called Flash. It was Grant Gustin who had to name him.
Yes,
that's true, man. That's true. Oh my God, yeah.
So things have improved, but there is still. You're right. There is still that kind of like, well, we haven't really embraced the names yet because people are just going to be, we're going to keep adding the jokes about that. So.
But costume somehow, like, we're like, someone running a red suit, that's totally believable. But like calling him the Flash, no, we can't call him the Flash. That's too goofy. Like,
he's got to be like, the Streak, which I'm like, isn't that worse?
Or the Blur,
right? Oh yeah, the Blur for like Superman's early name in Smallville. I was like, I don't know about this.
Again, Small was like sacred to me, but like when I got older, I'm like. Because I thought the Blur was like the coolest name when I was like 14, but then when I grew up, I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's not the most clever cover name, but they could even use Superboy because of legal rights. So I'm like, okay, I guess for the Blur it is because it looks like a blur, but
yeah, they could have done.
Yeah, early 2000s superhero media, kids.
Yes. Oh well. Cold, as he's called, appears to be looking to target a train station. So Barry does go to stop him. He does not have the suit yet, so it's still Barry. He's not called the Flash yet. Cold escapes, destroying a train, and that's where Barry has to kick into action, taking a passenger off the train one by one, similar to the plane sequence in the David Goyer draft with Wally West. But we'd actually see a version of this in the CW show in Captain Cold's first episode, I believe. So here's the footage of that come to life, thanks to our assistant Dan for putting this together for us. So this is pretty cool. And again, the DNA of Goyer's stuff kind of transfers over to this script, and the DNA from this goes into the TV show. So kind of cool for all the connections here. Barry does get wounded by a piece of shrapnel and turns to Valerie for help. Obviously, there's no Valerie in the show, but I mean, Caitlin's kind of the most obvious person to connect her to. In this visual, but Valerie helps pull out the shrapnel and indicates that Dr. Thawne won't like the fact that he's constantly endangering himself and using his powers to, put himself in harm's way. But, Barry brings up that helping people is what he does, which we can tell is what makes Valerie start to fall for him. So we get kind of a love triangle thing going on, or a love square if you include Nathan into this. But people believe it's a miracle that everyone was thrown to safety, but Iris looks at the security footage and notices that there is a man's foot through the blur or streak that's going on. So she has a theory that there is a guardian angel or a silent guardian, another Christopher Nolan thing, going around and helping people out. And she shares her theories about this over dinner with her fiance. Hold on real quick. There we go. With her fiance and with Barry, and Barry kind of becomes a jerk for a bit. He like mocks her theory, compares it to Santa Claus in front of everyone. I don't know, I kind of bumped on this, but maybe that's just because I picture Grant Gustin in this and I don't really see Grant's version of Barry being that, sarcastic with her on that stuff. Probably a different approach for there, but again, thankfully this became a show where they got to keep what worked and throw out what didn't. But We then go back to the opening where Barry is going around Central City, helping people, only to find himself in the building that's on fire and trapped in there. And when he wakes up, this part was weird to me. He wakes up, he finds out that this was not set up by Cold. This was actually set up by the Star Lab scientists to test him out and see the best ways to protect him. I was kind of disappointed by this. I thought there was going to be a big like Cold confrontation or something like that. But Barry is pissed. Naturally, I would be too. And thinks they'll expose him to stop him from using his powers to help people. But Valerie brings up that she and the other scientists want in. So there we go. Early Team Flash, before Team Flash was even a thing. So they know he needs a protective suit, so they build the Flash suit and boots for him. And what's cool, too, is that they have... I mean, sometimes it gets a little ridiculous about what Andy was saying about, like, the Nolan-esque need to explain everything. But here I thought it was kind of cool, where Barry brings up that the suit's red because when he goes fast, it will expand into infrared and make him seem less visible to the naked eye. And then one of the other doctors brings up that he needs some sort of foil in the front to cut down on the drag and the speed. And so that's when they come up with the chest emblem with the lightning bolt. I don't know if the science works out on that at all. I haven't studied that, but it seems like a cool justification in the script.
It just sounds cool.
It does sound cool, doesn't it?
It's like Stanley always talking about, I don't even know what a gamma ray is.
But it sounds like it could turn a guy into a Hulk.
It just sounds nice.
Yes. So I don't remember this being in the series.
Cisco talks very briefly about it, but like, because what happened is Barry comes back and says to Caitlin and Cisco that, you know, like, we got to do something, you know, but like, I need something out there. And then Cisco shows him that. But there's, maybe there was a deleted scene where, like, because, you know, some scenes sometimes get they get shortened, so there could be something where, like, maybe Cisco said literally all these things, but I'm still trying to grasp the idea that they, in order to prove to him that they were in, they had to almost kill him.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like, this is. It felt like, hey, what would be a really cool opening is we put the Flash in danger, and then they're like, okay, how are we going to follow it up? Fuck. All right, let's just have it be Team Flash who does it, and we need that beat. Like, that's what it seemed like.
Yeah,
to
I
me.
would not go back to that team if I were them. So, you know, it's
This is why Cisco and Caitlin were better. Like,
yes, indeed. These three just, you know, again, it feels like two of them were Cisco but split into two, or like Caitlin but split into two, and I'm like, you know, there's too many people here. I will admit though that when I heard Dr. Fun was, you know, when I saw Accelerator, I'm like, wow, really, Greg? And then I'm like, Dr. Fawn, I'm like, oh no, let me guess. That's because I kept just, you know, turning the page. I'm like, if he somehow shows up in a wheelchair, I'm going to actually burst laughing. And that's exactly what happened. I'm like, well, again, it's a clever plot, but I'm like, damn, Greg was like, no wonder Greg was so eager during Arrow to be like, because they were like trying to break the season finale. He was like, you know what we should do? We should do a Flash show, and I might have some ideas. And then just
you might. Yep. I mean, look, I would do it too if I had an unmade, because that's one of the things that I've always brought up is kind of weird sometimes. We have all these like unmade superhero scripts, but I'm like, when they go back to the drawing board on the next reboot, they never go back and say like, hey, like this script was really good just at the wrong time. They never be like, hey, like we could go build off of this. You know, like sure there might be some updates, but you know the Goyer script would still work if they wanted to do Wally West in the DCU. They'd have some updates here and there, but like I think it would still work for stuff. But they never really do that. They never go back and be like, oh, there's a script from 2006 or whatever that we could like recycle and maybe do put some updates, but it's mostly already written. They kind of just always start from the drawing board on the
just
stuff.
put in some references to TikTok or whatever, and I'm sure it's up to date too.
Yeah. Like it could easily work in the upcoming universe, but I really don't think they're going to do that. But here's like the only real instance where they got to kind of do that, because the same people who were in charge of the script get to kind of do it for a TV show, and like, hey, they did a great job in terms of updating it. I think the Wells thing really helped, because then you weren't really sure if he was Reverse Flash, even though until like it was very much confirmed. But in the beginning, there were all these theories about who Wells could have been, and they just had more time to flesh everyone out and just give people better personalities. Because honestly, like the Team Flash in this just feel like you could just cover up the names and I wouldn't know which scientist is talking. It's just like, all right, Valerie's the girl, and then you got 2 dudes who are scientists, and that's it. As opposed to like Cisco and Caitlin have very clear personalities in the show, regardless of one being a man, one being a woman, one being Latino, one being white. Like, it doesn't matter in terms of that stuff. It's purely in the character voices and the personalities that you got kind of like the fun science guy who has all the nicknames for people, and you got Caitlin being the very straightforward by the book type. Like, that's very, very clear personalities. Here, characterizations just aren't there, which is probably why that didn't carry over. They had an opportunity to rewrite that. So Barry does get to bond with Valerie more. We get a bit of a love triangle at play here when Iris walks in at a bar where Barry's with Valerie and feels jealous. Valerie picks up on this and wonders if Barry still has feelings for Iris. And then here's something that shocked me, which I wasn't expecting. And Andy, let me know what you thought about this part. Barry reveals that he and Iris were actually together in high school and lost their virginity together. So this is not a thing where like he's never told her love. Like, they've actually been together before. Iris wanted to stay together, but Barry decided he couldn't have a life and fight crime as a CSI at the same time. Again, this is not in the CW show, so this really surprised me here. How did you feel about this as a West Allen fan?
I was like, why didn't they just put that in season 1 instead of the nonsense of like, because again, I don't like the fact they just brought in Linda just so that, because again, Linda should be with Wally, I get it, Bart should be with Valerie. I don't know. This is the thing, I don't know. I was like, Valerie, why are you here? But again, it's like, because my co-host on the Fly for Guitarian, she loves Valerie, but like, I bet when she finds out what happens to Valerie in the script, she's gonna be like, Greg just hates me. But I thought it was cute. I thought like, okay, they're high school sweethearts. They're now like, they have to rekindle their flame, but then landing on the CW, they're like, you gotta have angst and triangles, and for some reason, even though they love each other, there has to be something in the way. CW, the ultimate cockblocker. But I thought it was sweet. I was like, okay, they really knew what they wanted to do with Barry and Iris, so that's why that's why it doesn't surprise me at all why they work so well on the show, because clearly Greg he knew what he wanted to do with them, but just. I thought it was sweet, and it was very like typical like 2010s heroes of like, I love you but I can't be with you because I have to fight crime as CSI. CSI don't fight crime; they just investigate.
I got that wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting with
it's like how Barry behaves. Barry always behaves like as if like I'm putting my line on the line.
No,
like Barry, you don't even have like a
Barry got that wrong.
Yeah, Barry, you don't even have like a bulletproof vest, or you don't even have weapons. Like you just go to yes, you're just Sherlocking your way through things about which was actually a really cool thing they did in the pilot when like we see from his point of view. I don't know if that was a plan to do. I wonder if they were going to do that in the film actually.
I mean, I didn't notice a Sherlock type sequence where we were following the clues, but they made him kind of.
They explained a lot of like what he's seeing in his head. Like he's like, and I think maybe that would have been like, okay, you may need to tone down the exposition and just kind of like show a little bit from his point of view, because that's when I'm like I've kind of lost track a little bit. Like, wait, what is he doing? What is he analyzing? So I had to go back a few times.
Yeah. They don't really do it to that extent. So it's another thing where like this is almost the first draft for the series, and the series got to basically throw out what didn't work and keep what did. So that was cool. Valerie brings up what kind of is Barry's arc in this about his problem is he is thinking more than feeling. And so Barry says that, that's not, the idea of him feeling is not much of a strong suit. And so Valerie says they'll work on that, and they kiss and they end up sleeping together. Sorry, Bart, but he sleeps with Valerie in this one. So the next day, Barry meets with Iris, who finds out that all of Cold's victims spent large sums of money before their deaths. And so because of that evidence, Barry figures out that Cold isn't a serial killer. He's a hitman working for someone. I'm not sure if I followed the logic on this one, because I'm just like, well, what if he was just a serial killer for rich people or something? But I guess maybe he was going off of like, well, they all had this connection. I don't know, but I forgave it because I was still reading. But we intercut to Iris's fiance, Nathan Newberry, at home, who emerges from the shower as It's Getting Hot in Here is being played. No, that's not true. But
he wanted that for a long time.
He finds it might have made more sense earlier than in like 2019 or whenever that episode was. But Nathan emerges from the shower and finds out that he's feeling a little cold as Snart comes and kidnaps Nathan, presumably as a way to get to Iris for writing about him in her blog and calling him cold. But Barry and Iris find out that that's happened. Barry goes to investigate, finds a piece of sort of like one of Cold's capsules that he uses to freeze people, takes it back to Star Labs where Team Flash tries to figure it out when Thawne comes in. And, they've been caught because Thawne's supposed to, not approve of the fact that Barry's out there doing this. But Thawne reveals that he does know about their project. He is smart. He is in charge of Star Labs, and he's the Reverse Flash. But anyway, he basically helps them figure out how to trace it back to Cold's headquarters. And that's where Barry goes off to stop Cold from killing Nathan, rescuing him, but not before Cold injects Nathan with a syringe. Flash speeds
I wish
up.
we got this costume. Did they ever do this costume
For Captain Cold?
Yeah.
They did not.
This is pretty, for me at least, I think this is pretty cool Captain Cold costume, pun intended.
They did this one. They did this one for Citizen Cold, but he had sleeves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember when the set photos came out, everyone lost their absolute minds because they're actually doing him right. So yeah, he had those goggles. He had those goggles. Like when Will was just walking around on set with those goggles, I'm like, he should be able to see anything, but I don't care. This looks amazing.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I missed this, but did they have the bright colors too? Was it this bright?
I don't remember.
Not as bright. Okay.
And
anyway,
it was like the same costume, but with these goggles, and it was a doppelganger character because they already had killed off Captain Cold in Legends of Tomorrow, so he was.
Oh, don't remind me. I will never forget. I will never forgive. I will never forgive Legends of Tomorrow.
First, we had to kill the best character in
Legends of Tomorrow. Yeah. So James Gunn or whoever's going to do this, man. I guess it's going to be a while before there's a Flash reboot, but. This costume, I would go with this. Yep. This is Rebirth, probably. Do you know?
No, this is New 52 because that's when he had powers.
52.
If you look at his hands, because that's when they all use their weapons powers to themselves. But this suit is pretty sick.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I like it. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, it's cool. So Cold injects Nathan with a syringe, and just so that he doesn't suffer the same fate as Chire, Flash speeds off and gives Nathan to the paramedics and provides a handwritten set of instructions on how to treat him. So he saves Nathan's life. Cold runs off and sees Flash is chasing after him, so he starts freezing everything around him like a madman. So Flash steps in and races people away, rescuing 35 civilians out of 21 cars. Pretty good. Iris sees what's going on and witnesses Flash in action, confirming that this, guardian angel is real. Cold then sees Iris and steals an SUV to try to run her over. But, and this is really cool, Flash goes and disassembles the SUV piece by piece to save her, and leaving him with not much of a truck to run her over, and then reassembles it into a cage to arrest Cold. I don't remember if he's done that in the show. He had to have done that at some point in the show, right?
He did dismantle a car because there was, in season 4, I watched the show too much. But
I knew you would know, though.
There's an episode where they introduce a character named Kilgore from the comics who can hack technology, and there's a smart car where this innocent guy is he was bad for some reason, I guess. So he was driving, he can't stop the car. So Barry he takes and just disassembles the car. So all he has left is just the steering wheel and the seat, and he just goes a little poof in the wall instead of crashing into splashing blood and all that. So he did actually disable all the wheels on the truck once, but not to that extent of what he did with Captain Cold. This is when they had more budget in their pockets, right? But now they could not do that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
I figured I could have either spent 30 minutes trying to figure out which episode, or I could have just asked you on this one. So thank you. I had a feeling you would know on this.
I know what
Resident
season
expert.
usually.
Yeah.
Usually I know what season episode number. I'm kind of because they all kind of just at some point just mesh in together.
Sure.
So I'm I will be it's probably somewhere in the first half or second half. I will be able to say.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, that's cool. I had a feeling it was going to be at some point he's done it. It was probably an episode I had seen. I had just forgotten. along the way. But yeah,
He
I
may have
remember
done it in
seeing that
season
Gilbert
one
one.
too. He may have done it in season one as well, because they did a lot in season
Yeah.
one. Like they just because it's almost like they felt like, oh, we're not gonna get another season, so let's just pull out everything we can.
That's what it felt like. Yeah, it felt like they put most of their good ideas in that first one to just be like, hey, like this might be our only shot, so let's just make it as good as possible. And they're just like, oh shit, we got another season. All right, let's keep going with other characters. So I think, let's see, with this next part, where I lost my place. Oh yeah, so they've pretty much arrested Cold. And he takes him to the precinct, and they find that Cold has no ID, no prints, nothing in his pockets but knives and lint. But Cold reveals Cold himself.
I was like, where is he going with this?
Yeah. I mean, they have that part. They don't have the pockets and lint part in there, but they might as well have. They might as well have, honestly, because it's just like, oh, he's mysterious again. I mean, because again, you got this guy killing a dude on TV, making threats about blowing places up, going into these long speeches about, I mean, I hate to say society. I don't think he ever says the word society, but like he kind of is about that type of stuff. And then when they arrest him, there's no identification, and he's the one who actually ends up telling them that his name is Leonard Snart.
Were they trying to be deep? He had some they were just trying to be deep and have some deep lines from the villain.
I guess, but the problem is I don't remember a goddamn thing that he says during any of those monologues. So it's it could be they were trying, but it's just not at the same level as Ledger's, especially because it's like right after. This is 2011, so like Ledger's Joker is still fresh in the mind, so it just comes off as more derivative.
I almost wonder if the studio gave him a note like, we need another like smash successful villain. So like you need to write something like that. I mean, in that case, if that's what they were doing, all they needed to do was just have Cold at some point dress up as a nurse and just blow up a hospital, and then you'll have a complete set.
Yes.
And now all I see is Wentworth Miller running around in a dress, like trying to like get his remote to work, and he jumps into a school bus, and like I love that movie so much, but I cackle every time that he just nobody noticed some deranged fool walking with a mask. It's like you can see his forehead. I'm like, if I was a doctor, I'm like, nurse, get the hell out of here.
Or how Two-Face doesn't react until he takes the mask off, even though you can see everything from the nose.
Oh yeah. He's kind of like, who is this?
That's true.
Oh, I see your nose now. Now I know who you are. But Cole is very like because he's not as snarky as he is in the show. Like he's very like. So like if I don't know if Wentworth Miller could have played this if he had been cast in the movie, but like I do prefer Cole just being a little more sassy or whatever. So on, like, the rogues, how cute, whatnot. But this Cole is like, it's almost like they took some of Flash's darker villains and was like, let's just have Cole be them, like, because there's darker villains in the Flash comics that are. That are like this, so like because Cole like also isn't the whole point with Cole that he has a code of that he doesn't kill?
Yeah, that's the other problem here. I'm like, you basically just wanted to do a Ledger Joker thing, and they're just like, let's pick him. He's a Flash villain, right? And then they didn't really like. We're about to go into the origin of this version of Captain Cold, and it's not at all anything like in the comic either.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, they could have, if anything, because I know Weather Wizard, he's more like, you know what? Why didn't they just take Heatwave? He's a paramedic. I'm like, again, because I'm like, Cold is the one who's like, nah, man, we don't kill.
Yeah, that's what makes it a little more interesting.
Again, he works here for me, but I'm just kind of like, there's nothing like he doesn't stand out much. And also he runs around with a lot of needles. Like I'm like, like you all are people so gullible that they don't even notice someone just like casually just running around with needles and just like, oops, you've been infected. Oh, you're dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just not. Again, like thank God for what they actually ended up doing in the show, which embraced more of it. Actually, had the cold gun, had the fuzzy parka, had the goggles, had these the goggles from the New 52 at some point. Like they actually carried over a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It probably should have been Heatwave or someone who was darker. Especially because this character just kind of becomes a henchman anyway. Overall, like they kind of like what they did with
like
Scarecrow
Bane,
and Batman Begins.
Bane in the Dark,
or Bane
in Dark Knight Rises, but it's like you know, I can tell if Jeff Johns had been involved with it, because Captain Cold is like his favorite villain. He would never allow Cold.
Wait, it's his favorite villain of all time? Or favorite Flash villain?
I think favorite Flash villain, but he has said like he's very stressed very much that Cole is like someone he like dies to love to write for. Like if you look at season 1, like almost all the big Captain Cole episodes are all written by Jeff and like another writer.
Uh-huh.
So but I don't.
I think one of the ones he wrote for Smallville is the one that has the Captain Cold cameo too, where it's just like the Legion of Doom cameos.
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was a Jeff Johns written one too.
That was so random that they just all showed up somewhere. I was like, wait, so they've been around this entire time?
Captain Cold exists before Superman in this continuity.
Maybe Captain Cold thinks by freezing people he keeps them alive forever. Instead of killing them. I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. Yeah,
in this script.
I guess so.
Yeah, in this version, it's revealed that 10 years ago he lost his family to a house fire. So I guess because he lost his family to a fire, he's a ice guy. But he had a breakdown and was institutionalized.
I hate heat.
Yes,
in all its forms.
Institutionalized, and then he escapes in the middle of a snowstorm, of course. And so, I guess he became Cold from there. And so Barry wonders why Snart would reveal so much about his own backstory. Finds out that Snart keeps talking about having some kind of protector who will come to rescue him. Clearly his boss. So back at Star Labs, there's kind of a suspicion because, like in the CW show where Snart's cold gun was created by Cisco, in this version, the cold gun is related to Star Labs projects and Star Lab equipment. So there's some suspicion going on in terms of who could be, behind this. Meanwhile, Iris goes to Barry and brings up that she has figured out that he's the Flash. Except she doesn't call him that because he hasn't really publicized the name yet. But she's known him since they were kids, and she recognized the handwriting that he wrote on the note to help save Nathan from, the cold serum that was in his system. So basically at that point they have a conversation. Barry is still kind of doesn't want to be with her because he's the Flash now, so like he's even more involved with putting himself in danger, but he does tell her that he prefers to be called the Flash over being called the Guardian Angel, which again, the Guardian Angel thing they do carry over into the show. Oliver called Barry that at the end of that last episode that he showed up in this past season. So they still carry that over, but the Flash does go and interrogate Cold in his cell, find out who he's working for, and when he's there, prison guards start dropping dead. A speedster is there, an evil speedster. Again, another thing from the Goyer script, which also had an evil speedster breaking someone out of prison. So that's when the Flash encounters a man just as fast as him, quote, in a black speed suit like his, mask hiding his features, a dark speedster. This kind of goes in line to what we were talking about earlier, where it's just like, let's do the comics, but we're a little bit ashamed of it, so let's not go all the way. Similar to the Goyer script, the villain is described having a black suit, not yellow, from the comics. And he's only referred to as the Dark Speedster, not as Reverse Flash or Professor Zoom or even Dark Flash. He's Dark Speedster. So Flash has a speed fight with the Dark Speedster, and they go through Chicago, Gotham, and Metropolis with the Dark Speedster doing, quote, martial arts at 500 miles per hour, which is pretty cool. So during this fight, Flash recognizes that the Dark Speedster is the one who killed his mother. Of course, we know who this is. It's Reverse Flash. I'm just going to call him that from now on because Dark Speedster feels kind of dumb in comparison. But he threatens Iris and tells Flash to stop running. Before beating the shit out of him, he pops Barry's ribs, breaks his jaw, and shatters his legs. So this reminded me, when I was reading it, of, first off, the confrontation that Flash first has with Reverse Flash in Season 1, where he meets Reverse Flash for the first time. But also reminded me of the Zoom fight, where Zoom pretty much broke Barry's back. He did a Nightfall thing on him at that point. So Barry decides to give in to the Dark Speedster's demands and stop being the Flash in order to save Iris, which of course makes Valerie jealous, since she sees that he clearly loves Iris still. But Dr. Thawne thinks he's making the right decision in not being out there, of course, and wants him to use his speed in the particle accelerator rather than fight crime. So, he kind of has Barry do some laps around the particle accelerator and stuff. But Nathan meanwhile, is recovering from being attacked by a cold and admits to Iris that, they were wrong. Cold was not actually trying to target Iris through Nathan. Cold was actually trying to target Nathan because he was the one who's been laundering all this money that the victims have been trying to launder. And pretty much, it's complicated, but basically a lot of this money traces back to the Star Labs particle accelerator. And so someone has been trying to cover their tracks and has hired Cold to kill all these people to cover up those tracks. Iris is, of course, horrified by this, leaves her fiancé, and shares the news to Barry with the idea that this particle accelerator has a different purpose than what they originally thought. And the person who finds this out is Valerie. The accelerator is meant to steal Barry's speed, and she tells this to Dr. Thawne that she suspects that it is one of the other scientists, Dr. McGee, and that when the accelerator goes off, it will create this universe killer called a singularity. Again, there's a lot of complicated stuff in this. This is a very dense script. There's a lot going on here, as you can tell.
Universe killing thing, by the way, that's a singularity thing. It's essentially a black hole, right?
Yes.
I think it's supposed to be kind of like a black hole kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty much she brings up like, hey, like this particle accelerator, something's wrong with it. And Dr. Thawne, of course, is just like, yes. And he stands up in front of her from the wheelchair, vibrates, starts speeding around her, and cuts her to death. Sorry to your colleague, Andy, who's a big Valerie fan, but she dies in this.
Yeah, Toddy, if you watch it at a later time, I'm sorry. Greg Berlanti just did not care for Valerie because she was always hoping Valerie would at some point show up on the show because we even got Bart. We did get Bart.
I don't know why they couldn't just throw Valerie in then as Bart's girlfriend, I guess. Like they could have done that.
Because he had to go back in time and kiss a woman that existed long before he was even born and then make it weird.
I guess so, but
I kid you not, he traveled in 2013, mixed up with a girl who would be at least like, listen, I mean, he's 18 in the future, but this, Avery Ho would be at least like 20, 40 years old. So I'm like, Valerie's right there. I don't know, dude. Yeah, I don't know either.
Thawne reveals to her the reason why he's doing all this is, quote, I want to go home, which carries over in the show again. I think this whole idea of Reverse Flash is stuck, and he has to create the particle accelerator and wait for Barry to come of age to become the Flash. That's all Berlanti stuff. That's not in the comics. But I actually kind of really like this because it does show there is a consequence of him going back in time and killing Barry's mom. He can't just necessarily go back whenever and kill random people, even though he does do that in the comics. But I do like the fact that there is a consequence to that happening. And this death of Valerie is similar to some instances of Wells revealing himself in the CW show. Like, I remember when he got out of his wheelchair in front of Simon Stagg, who surprised him and then just stabbed the guy to death. Or when he revealed himself to Cisco in order to kill him. Like that, which was a great scene.
This is what I immediately thought of. Not just because both characters are, Hispanic, but it was very much like I can see Valerie just being like, her face just being destroyed and like, oh my God, I looked up to you and, you were my hero and the only thing that would have made it better is like, to me, you've been dead for centuries. That's the only thing it needed. Because literally, that photo you just had, but that's what I had in my mind when I was reading. I'm like, they're in the basement.
Oh yeah, that too. They're in that area.
I like this. All I could see. So I'm like, I gotta applaud Berlanti for like that. He had a vision that he was able to evolve, but stick to for most of it. You take out the personality less Team Flash and put in the ones with personality, but then also again like the fact that the whole thing with Eobard, like he had a plan with it. I don't know why he was so ashamed to use Reverse Flash as a name back then, but it's like, because like this the moment I'm like Dark Speeder Suit, I'm like, I swear to God, if this is another Black Flash reference, because everyone is using Black Flash wrong outside of the show, then I'm like, if there's another Black Flash reference, I'm gonna actually like throw my iPad into the ground. But I'm like, okay, this is clearly Eobard. Okay, this is clearly Eobard. Okay, because I'm like, they have to call him Reverse Flash at some point. I'm like, nope. It was early 2010s. They didn't give two shits about actual names.
But again, just like Captain Cold, right? We're grateful that like, hey, they actually did go full out. He's in the yellow suit. in all 9 seasons when he shows up, right? Not including the weird negative Speed Force suit he wears at the end of season.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that. in this instance, right? They were just like, fuck it. It's Reverse Flash. It's Eobard Thawne. We're doing the fact that he's from the future. He's in the yellow suit, and again, I appreciate that. I appreciate it because like it's one of those suits you see in like maybe the earlier comics, and you're just like, okay, like that's a stupid idea for a villain, and then you see him in the show, and you're just like, oh, this guy's terrifying, you know. So they really did a good job with that, and I also think that it's another testament to know which ideas of yours are good and which ones you can leave behind, and I think when we see the transition from this to the TV show, you can really see that like they really did transfer their best ideas. There's not really anything in here where I'm just like, man, they should have done that in the show, because they did do it in the show. We've had 9 seasons. If they didn't do it already in the show, it's not going to happen.
It was just weird to me that I'm like, because the way that because Eobard wants to be the opposite of what Barry is. So
Right.
the red to the yellow. So that's why I'm like, you could have made like a dark yellow or something. Like, because I'm like, is this really what he's gonna wear for the whole thing? Because I kept seeing the Zoom costume the
Sure,
whole
yeah.
time.
Yeah. I kind of saw that too, or some like with like some weird silver chest thing that they describe on it. But I'm just like, let me just go with the yellow suit. It's the classic. We'll accept it now. Maybe we wouldn't have back in 2011, or they didn't think people would have, but we accept it.
I mean,
now
they clearly
sure.
didn't, because they put Ryan Reynolds in a CGI costume. So they clearly had issues.
So yeah, Barry at this point doesn't know that it's Thawne, but he's close to figuring it out. So Iris talks him back into becoming the Flash to protect everybody, not just her. And then they find out that Valerie was murdered, and Jerry McGee is the prime suspect. Jerry being the dude with the Franciscan monk hairstyle that Andy pointed out earlier. Jerry claims he didn't do it, which reminds Barry of his father, Henry, which I thought was a nice little beat. But again, there's just so much going on in this. He figures out the only possible person behind this is Dr. Eobard Thawne, and that's when Thawne strikes in his final, the big fight, which is Thawne sending out all the criminals he's broken out of Iron Heights to attack Central City as this big distraction. Barry decides that everyone, if everyone's attacking at once, he's got to be everywhere at once. And so he moves so fast, he creates multiple versions of himself, similar to what happens in Season 2, and saves lives and fights disasters. During the sequence, Barry has to not think, but feel in order to channel all his power and retrieve all the bombs planted around the city, which I feel like also happened at one point in the show where there's like a bunch of bombs that he has to retrieve. Like I feel like that's something that's happened in a lot of different Flash stories. And then he carries them out into the water, running literally on water like he did in the Plastique episode. And it explodes harmlessly, saving the city. So that's pretty cool. The Flash then arrives at the particle accelerator where he confronts the Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne. And we see that Thawne comes from the future where Barry...
Not that suit.
Yeah. You're talking about Barry's, right?
Yeah, of course. Yes, because,
That helmet.
it's that's not even a helmet. That's like a, I don't even know what it is. Like, it just... I understood that Grant wanted some more space for his, for the chin, but I'm just like... But then Eobard puts on his mask, then I'm like, oh man, it's like when the villain looks better than the hero, then it's like that. Then we got a problem with a capital P.
Yeah. So yeah. Sorry, this is the one that Dan pulled up. The picture.
It's okay.
We see that Thawne comes from the future, and we see kind of a flashback, or is it flash forward, of Barry fighting Thawne, but it's like a future Barry who's wearing a brighter suit. Similar to the show where, Barry starts off in kind of like a maroon type of suit and gets him like a brighter red suit as the seasons go by. But yeah, kind of the same exposition that we would get in the TV show. The two are rivals. Thawne gets stranded in this timeline with his speed being drained after he killed Nora Allen. So he had to wait until Barry got his powers and build the particle accelerator so he could drain Barry's speed from his experiments, steal it for himself, and find his way home to the future. And along the way, he recruited Cold to help him cover his tracks. So Cold ends up taking Iris hostage, puts a syringe to her neck, because as Andy said, Cold has a lot of syringes going around on this. So Flash can either stop Thawne from creating a singularity and save the world, or he can save Iris. Flash, being the man we know he is, decides to save Iris first. So he races forward as Cold's just about to inject her, and Barry backhands the syringe away from Iris, which then hits Snart, injecting him instead. And Snart says that he feels warm before he freezes to death himself. Kind of a weird beat.
Yeah, I don't get how that would. The only thing that would have made that scene amazing is if Barry had said, hey Cole, stop injecting yourself, just to be a petty bully. But I'm like, when he was like, I feel warm, I'm like, buddy, I don't think, no.
I think they just wanted to go with something that sounded like the character was at peace, or sounded, no pun intended, but sounded cool, but really doesn't make any sense when you think about it.
That would have been memed and gifts in today's social media culture for sure, because it's like, it doesn't make sense. It's like if you put your hand down on something that's frying, you're like, oh, this feels cold. No, you would be burning your hand off.
Yeah, there's also the factor too where it's not like he's Mr. Freeze, where he just already has different body temperature. Where like, okay, maybe that would make sense, but he's just a regular guy who freezes other people. So I don't know.
And now all I see is Arnold Schwarzenegger as Captain Cold.
It's warm. Yeah, so Thawne runs on the particle accelerator track, shedding lightning and creating the singularity, again similar to what we saw at the end of season 1. So Flash has to stop it. And he tells Iris a line that I'm sure you liked, Andy, which is that, there are a million universes, but he's loved Iris in every single one of them, which feels foreshadowing because Doctor Strange says something very similar to Christine Palmer in Multiverse of Madness many years later.
Sam Raimi stole from Greg Berlanti.
Yes, I'm sure. He found that one line. I'm like, everything else can just stay with the Flash, but this one goes into my Doctor Strange thing. But Barry uses his speed and does what he did to the tornado, running counter to the flow, catches up to Thawne, grabs onto him, and says, "You're done running." And they fall into the Speed Force together. Thawne is torn apart by the Speed Force, exploding into white light, just like in the CW show. Maybe they would have brought him back to kill him off like 4 more times, like in the show, in the later movies, but who knows. But Barry himself gets taken to some version of his childhood home where he sees a future version of himself with Iris, and they have kids together. But in the Speed Force, he also gets to meet his mom, who gets to tell him how proud she is of him, and Barry finally gets to say goodbye to his mother before he hears Iris's voice. Which, I mean, I like the scene, but it's just not nearly as poignant as the scenes that we actually ended up getting in the series. Like this part really reminded me of the Runaway Dinosaur episode in season 2, where he's like stuck in the Speed Force and gets to talk to his mom, who is basically the Speed Force channeling herself into his mom. And once again, he gets out thanks to hearing Iris being his lightning rod. But like the dialogue in here just is not nearly as emotional as what we got in the.
It's rushed, and also I don't get, because this is what I hate with the MCU, is that they've decided the multiverse here is alternate timelines. Because in the whole script, they kept saying, you can travel different universes where your mom is alive. A universe where your mom is alive. I'm like, but that's not what you guys travel
that's
in
not your
time.
Mom. Yeah.
That's not his mom. That's Earth, Earth 2's Nora Allen or something. So like, I'm like, I think this was like probably before they all realized, okay, alternate timelines are not the same as alternate Earths, and because I was really lost like many times. I'm like, wait, so I had to like control like F in the script. I'm like,
no,
Earths.
I mean, I would alternate Earths and alternate timelines, the same thing. It's a different Earth in that timeline. Because
all of us are scratching our heads right now. Wait,
it's a whole other universe.
I see what you mean.
It's a whole other universe. Yeah. It's a multiverse, right? So it's a whole other universe with its own Earth.
I guess there's also
its own timeline.
Right. I mean, I guess there's also the debate on like, is this a Speed Force? Like in the show, is this an alternate Earth where this is happening? Where this is an alternate version of Nora. It seems like she knows this Barry. Not like I interpret it to be the Speed Force, but I'm also thinking about the show during this whole time of reading the script. But it also seems like she knows this Barry. Like she's not like being like, wait, there's another you going on. Like she seems to know this Barry. So I think this is like a Speed Force Nora thing that they ended up doing in the show. At least that's how I interpreted it.
This just seemed very rushed. I'm like, they should have just, after the battle, they should have just had him go back to the present time. Like this was just like, this just had me ask too many questions where I'm just like, you know what? I will just stick to Runaway Dinosaur because that makes way more sense.
Oh yeah, they're just like, this is a great idea, but it's better for a standalone episode than it is for after the third act battle. So I think, again, it worked out for the best what they ended up doing. But yeah, Barry hears Iris, finally comes back to reality. Iris and Barry finally kiss before we get to the end, where Iris still writes about the Flash, while Barry uses Thawne's fingerprint to get his father posthumously acquitted for the murder of his mom. And then we end on the Flash running through the city. But there's a post-credits scene attached here, which is interesting because sometimes you rarely get to see that there's the post-credits scene in these scripts, because most of these scripts that you have access to are like pre-MCU. But Flash is running when he stops and sees something green in the air. It's Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern, floating above, arms folded, and saying, "Light speed, not bad." And that's the end. So that's confirmation that this was going to be in the same universe as the Ryan Reynolds movie, which obviously didn't end up happening and isn't really true for connecting this to the Arrowverse, at least as far as I know they used some footage from the movie when they were establishing the different like Earths post-crisis, but that doesn't necessarily.
You want to know what gets confusing about that though? That was, even though it was footage from the movie, that was supposed to be the
setup.
Earth to the new show.
Which is not happening. Or is happening, just not the version with Berlanti.
You know what? We need to find those scripts at some point. There's like just 8 episodes that has been written that we will never see.
Hey, I mean, one of our Patreon patrons, Halsey, said it best. Where it's just like, with DC seems synonymous with the word unmade. But that's how we have a show. So, yeah, this is probably the most packed Flash script we've ever covered. Because like the 1987 one with the aliens, other than the alien stuff, it was just pretty straightforward. Seems very pared down thing. The Goyer one, a little bit more complex in plot, but still a good ride. Brancato's script is, not as good, I thought, as that one, but a similar thing with Goyer's. And then this one just has like a million different things to talk about in there, because it's just stuffed with characters, stuffed with subplots, stuff with things from the movie, and stuff that's going to happen in the TV show. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got what we got. It worked a lot better when they had the time to develop everyone, give Team Flash personalities, give Thawne a lot more interesting stuff to work with the same overall plot. So I'm glad we got what we got, but it is interesting to see this as like a first draft of season 1 for sure. Andrew, how'd you feel listening to all this and the different, the different ways that it sort of influenced the CW show?
I guess we got the better version. I mean, This seems like this could have been a first or second draft. This would have been probably rewritten a few more times before it came to screen. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you can't judge it too much. I mean, True. I would have liked it to have been simpler, but I mean, when you read this, how did you feel about the villain? He was like pretty menacing overall. You thought this guy's a badass, or
Thawne or Cold?
Either.
I mean, Cold I had problems taking seriously just because it seemed like an obvious Heath Ledger copycat type of thing, and then Thawne just felt like he's got the same beats as, like, the same major beats as the TV show, but not enough time to really have the characterization to make him stand out much. Because by the time you find out that he's the Dark Speedster or Reverse Flash, like, he doesn't really get to do much. He gets like 1 or 2 fights with Barry, and then he's out.
Okay.
How'd you feel, Andy, about the villains?
Yeah, Cold, I kept wondering, like, he's not funny. Like, and I know this like sounds like so weird that that's the character trait I'm looking for, but like when you look at what Captain Cold has been in the comic, you look at what he did on the Flash throughout season 1 and 2, I'm like, this just doesn't feel like this was like a placeholder villain for someone else, because like, 1, he does not kill, and 2, he didn't say much in this. Like he's a little bit dull. I'm like, this is why I think you could have done something way more interesting with Heat Wave. Someone who like, I mean, do you think he lost his parents in a fire? So, and he kills people. So, I don't get it. And with Fawn, I think this was like a good start, but not for a first movie when you're literally doing Barry's origin story, because we're spending all this time, going through Barry's emotions, Barry coming to terms with the powers, Barry dealing with his feelings for Iris, and then suddenly dark speedster enters the picture, and I feel like that would have been, you could have had a different villain here, but this is why I'm glad like they, Berlanti found a seed and then added the Harrison Wells twist to it, because I think that's why I'm like, why Harrison Wells and Tom Cavanaugh and AOR are so memorable, because every from the get go when Rick Cosanetta was cast as Eddie, everyone and their mother, including myself, were like, this is gonna be Reverse Flash, obviously, because he's the pretty young blonde who, he's gonna be with Iris, and they're gonna have this, triangle, and he's gonna hate Barry. No, it was a dude in a wheelchair. Which again I thought was very clever. But again, the fact that Berlanti thought about it since 2011, I'm like, okay. So I think he just wanted to do the Flash as a show, but he had to start with Arrow. Because he's like, I have this thing ready to go. But the villains are like, they're fine. They're fine. I just think Captain Cold is the most confusing one. I did notice that he had a little nod to the Trickster with Axel Walker. I'm guessing that's who he was supposed to be. There was a kid named Axel running around. I'm guessing that was him.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, kids, you can do a Flash movie without a bunch of Batman in it.
Yeah, right. Do you feel like Captain Cold is a little overrated as a Flash villain personally, or?
No, I think he's underrated. I think he's
underrated.
Because I think, but if you with the right writer, you can make him something very complex. Where he is a bad guy, but he has a moral code somehow. So yeah, with this one, I'm just like, okay, he's just a hitman. He's just Bane from Dark Knight Rises,
okay.
but with fewer lines and less weirder mask.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
So.
Oh well. Yeah.
But I mean, again, I think we're all glad we got what we got. But it was interesting to take this trip down and see the earlier versions and really appreciate sort of what they were able to carry over, I think, and develop better, really. So
is there any kind of real quick before out of here, since we have a Flash expert on our show, I have to ask. I know I could Google this, everybody, but I want to ask an actual person. Where does the Speed Force come from? They ever explain that
in the show,
in the comics, whatever? What is it?
There's been, I believe, there's so many variations of it, but I do believe that there was one version that kind of like, when Barry was struck by lightning, the Speed Force was kind of born with him. Obviously using that way of like, there is no Jay Garrick on this earth, because obviously Jay would have been created the Speed Force before Barry. Right. So, but yeah, the Speed Force has gone through so many variations. Don't ask me what they did with the show, because they literally killed the Speed Force, and then
they killed the Speed Force itself.
Yes, it was
like, to me. That's like we took out gravity. Like that's what it feels like to me.
The only reason it made sense was because Oliver's Spectre powers overwhelmed the Speed Force. Like it got sick from it. It's not supposed to be two opposite forces not supposed to interact with each other. And then Barry built his artificial Speed Force.
Artificial one, okay, all right. I mean,
I kid you not, we were all very confused.
Okay, we were all confused.
We just like. Season 7 is what we call the COVID season. So like there was a lot of weird. It's kind of like that one season of Community that we don't talk about because there was just so many things they were trying to do, but they couldn't because of production costs. And I'm sure also at that point like they kind of just got a little lost in themselves. It worked initially, but then somehow like Barry gave birth to all in Iris. They created all these other forces that come from the comic. They call them Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, the only other thing I wanted to say before we're out of here is like whenever they have this like thing in the script about like think, don't, or feel, don't think, I almost check out. It's just not a it's not a point I want a movie to make just from the jump. Like stop thinking. You're over. Like maybe it's okay as like a one line, but to make that, look, this is just my personal preference. To make that the arc for a big blockbuster movie, I just find it, honestly, dude, I'm not trying to piss people off, but I find it fucking lame. I don't like that arc. It's something kind of lazy about it. I would have put some other arc there, some other kind of arc there for Barry.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it has much development for him in comparison to, obviously the show has so many episodes to develop him that he goes on a bigger journey. But it feels like something that, like, it's fine for like a 40-minute episode, you know?
If he's trying to be a fucking jazz musician, sure. If it was Whiplash Part 2, I would have been okay with it or whatever, but just for the Flash, feel, don't think. It's just lame. That arc is lame to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would have made a good substitute for that is, instead of having something like that, you know, because it's basically don't think with your mind, you know, to think with your heart. But like, what I would have had Barry rather do was being afraid of becoming a god. Of like, why am I given the responsibility? Why am I given the responsibility of having godlike powers? Like, am I supposed to use them for good, or like what is defined as good or bad here? Because people say time travel is bad, but I think time travel might be good. People can get their loved ones back. Or, you know, we can change history. We can, we can take out evil in history. So that would have been far more interesting than feel, don't think.
Right.
Yeah, something he's afraid of what his powers will do to him ultimately. Yeah, that's like a billion times. That's a billion times more interesting than feel, don't think.
But you're probably right. This may have been the first, second draft, and maybe like if Warner Bros. Had decided, you know, we're gonna go do this movie, but you need to rewrite some of these plots, maybe they would have done it. But you know, but also working with Warner Bros., they're like, it's too many cooks in the kitchen. So you know, I would, you know, so to say that I'm kind of almost relieved it didn't go forward. Although it would have been interesting to see Hal at the end, and then if it's because. Theoretically, it could have tied into Man of Steel if they wanted to.
Could have. Oh man, my like fan rewrite of Man of Steel would have had red streaks going through the city, saving people from Superman fucking up, and you know, like they keep the city destruction, but no one actually. There's hardly any casualties because. If they wanted the Justice League to show up early, that could have been a way to do it. Like the Justice League shows up and they're like, "What? You know, what the fuck are you doing?" You know, at the end after, and maybe they stopped.
It was his first day. It was his first day.
It was his first day. But you know, we could have like. You could have had all your your cake and eaten it too. You know, you could have had Superman fucking up and city destruction. You can have that Snyder spectacle, but no casualties from the destruction because Flash is there, Green fucking Lantern is there. We're seeing red streaks, we're seeing green light in the sky, we're seeing Wonder Woman fly around. Like, if that shit popped up out of fucking nowhere at the end of Man of Steel, it would have been incredible, honestly. Maybe some people wouldn't like it, but I think it would have been pretty cool.
Wasn't there a point in this script where Barry actually ran through Smallville, or did I just make that up?
I mean, he does have a fight with Darkspeed's Reverse Flash through like Metropolis and Gotham. But let me see if it's.
I feel like it's
a Smallville. It is, yeah, a Smallville cornfield.
Nice,
nice. So they go through Smallville to Chicago, Gotham, and Metropolis. So it's still part of the. It's still part of the fight with Thawne on that part.
Central City's supposed to be a West Coast city?
I feel like it's Midwest.
It's Midwest? Because it is Central, right?
What do you think, Andrew?
Because it's Central.
I mean, I guess it would make sense.
It could be central to Central California or something.
Well,
I don't know.
On the Flash, we've always argued that Central City seems to be like on the East Coast because we know National City is on the West Coast because when Supergirl season 1, because season 1 of Supergirl you can see the palm trees, and then suddenly season 2 you never see them again, but you know they're supposed to be on the West Coast because
locations change.
Yeah, exactly, and like and suddenly everyone looks a lot more colder than usual, but Metropolis was obviously East Coast and National City was West Coast, so we always argued that Central City was East, with Star City kind of like almost like almost think about like as like the New Jersey to Central City, almost like they're on the east. If it was Central, that would have been kind of like hilarious because on the nose. I never thought about that, but we always assume that it's on the East Coast. But you know, with Crisis and Flashpoint, like I feel like these cities have like relocated so many times. I don't even think any of Cisco's maps are right at this point.
Okay, got it.
Time travel, kids.
Yep.
Multiverse.
Indeed.
Multiverse.
All right, and with that is superhero stuff you should know. So, big thanks to Dan for gathering the visuals for the YouTube experience. We're going to go over some fan comments, and he's going to join us for some of these before I ask him to plug his stuff. But let's see, we got a few comments on our Almost Batman episode. So, Nick K says, fantastic content. This is the esoteric trivia I obsess over. Clearly, you come to the right show. Very in-depth. I combed the Batman on Film archives from the late 90s, early 2000s, a few months back, and it was funny to see Paul Newman as Bruce in Batman Beyond rumored. I forgot about this. Along with Affleck all the way back in the 90s. Yeah, when Affleck first became a big, star, and it was, Good Will Hunting and reindeer games and Sum of All Fears and stuff. He was just like, he's Daredevil. Maybe he could also be Batman. So it's kind of funny how things work out. So thank you, Nick, for adding that. Next is Nate R. So on the How Did This Get Made podcast, Lexi Alexander was interviewed for her directing Punisher Warzone. In it, she explained that the studio made her meet with Freddie Prinze Jr. to play Jigsaw. So for those who don't know Punisher and stuff, Jigsaw is like one of the big Punisher villains. His face is all fucked up from Punisher throwing him through a plate glass window. She said he wasn't the right guy, but agreed to meet him audition. She said that he was fantastic and wanted to cast him, but the studio said no because meeting him was a way of, quote, being nice.
Oh,
Ouch.
my God. What a waste.
It
was wasting Freddie Prinze's time.
Yeah, pretty much. This makes me believe he could have been great as Batman, especially year one. Like Ledger, Prince Jr. was a pretty boy, but wanted to break out of that stigma that represented his life. And unlike Ledger to this day, I don't think he ever did.
I would have loved to have seen that. That sounds cool. I do want to see people play against their type.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of awesome.
I think so too. Actually, if it was just like Freddie Prinze Jr. as the supervillain, you're just like, what? That's going to be lame. And then you see what he can. If this is another Ledger type situation, probably wouldn't have happened with Punisher Warzone. But like if something like that with a supervillain, that'd be awesome.
I'm trying to imagine him ugly, but I just can't.
You might have said the same thing about Heath, though.
Well, I mean, look at Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool.
Jigsaw out of all characters. Wow, I didn't know that. Being nice. Wow, studios are dicks.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Oh well, but thanks, Nate, for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then last one comes from Jared Presley saying, interesting you mentioned that Bill Murray was considered to be Batman in the 80s. For the movie Groundhog Day, Michael Keaton was considered for the role of Bill Murray's character in it.
Oh, wow.
I think it worked out in terms of
wow, that's so fucking meta. That's fucking funny.
That worked out. It worked out for the best. It's one of the best movies of all time, probably.
Yeah.
I think for sure. Like Bill Murray was perfect for Groundhog Day. And Keaton was perfect for Burton's Batman. To feel the reverse of that, I don't know. We would have to travel to the multiverse and see how that would play out, but I don't really see it playing out the same way. But thank you for that. So I thought I would give an opportunity to Andy to once again plug your podcast, plug your shows, your social media, anything you want to plug before we move on to our fan shoutouts.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I can't wait for you guys to come on my show very soon.
Oh,
so
yes,
this will
we
be
will
fun.
Be on yours.
Yes, we're crossovers, Infinity and Beyond. The Arrowverse may have said, fuck no more crossovers because the pandemic ruined everything, but we podcasters, we can keep going at it.
Yep.
But you can find me at theflashpodcast.com, which again by the time this episode comes out, it will be the week of the series finale. So we're if you're just now discovering the Flash podcast, you can just go through all 300 plus episodes if you want to, or just start with season 9 because that's the shortest one. But we're getting ready to wrap up the Flash on the Flash podcast, and the podcast will not end, but we'll kind of use it to kind of talk about other DC media and geek stuff. We're still figuring it out, much like the personalities of some of these characters in this Flash movie script that they never really figured out. But flashpodcast.com, we're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and we're part of a larger DCT podcast now. We're larger because Warner Brothers cast everything. So we're like we had like 10 podcasts last year. Now we're down to 6. So I was like, wow, Zaslow, you're making my job so hard. But yeah, DCPodcast.com, which is part of Multiverse of Color, which is our rebranded outlet that we used to be the Marvel Report, but now it's Multiverse of Color. We just kind of we acquired DC Podcast into that, but unlike Warner Bros. Discovery, we didn't fire a bunch of people and do tax write-downs. So there's that. I'm at Andrew Behbakht all over social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vero, Twitch, everything. And you can also find me at Screen Rant as a senior writer for superhero stuff.
Nice.
Oh, awesome.
I never sleep.
That's
sleep.
awesome.
Clearly. we have enough on our hands running this show in the Patreon feed. I don't know how it would be like to run 6 shows.
We tried. We wanted to run a Patreon for years, but it was just like none of us have time.
If you're doing 10 shows.
Yeah, but I'm not on every
bit.
podcast. I'm not on every podcast. I just produce all the other podcasts, but it's like I have to check in with 20 people every week of hey, you need anything? Is everything running smooth and so on? And then Warner Bros. Discovery happened. I was like,
well, I mean, doesn't that make it easier, not harder? Because then you don't have as many shows. But...
Exactly, but it was also kind of depressing because so much were taking away from us. We lost Batwoman, we lost Tomorrow, we lost Naomi, we lost Titans and Doom Patrol, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
Stargirl,
but
Stargirl.
I was so angry. when Stargirl got canceled. So we lost so many shows, and I'm like, yay, but also no. I like some of these shows, so but let's hope that James Gunn's new DC. I mean, I'm excited for a lot of them, like Booster Gold, and hey, that's something that if Freddie Prinze Jr. can never get out of being the pretty boy, he could
I didn't think about that.
Booster Gold's villain. Let's see it. Bring him back, Gunn.
Does he have villains?
I'm sure he's got some. He's been around for
got
a while.
Somebody it's Gunn's universe. It's going to be some obscure guy who showed up in Blue Booster Gold number 50, who they now turned into a great villain that we're going to talk about for years to come because he's now in this movie. I had never heard of the High Evolutionary, but Jesus, that was a hell of a villain. So. We'll see, but they'll probably have some obscure villain for Booster Gold.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be good, really good.
Cool. All right, I think that brings us to the fan shoutouts.
Okay, everybody, we want to thank everybody up here on the board. Man, the font's getting smaller. I see it. I want to thank everybody here, of course, but some of our most recent people include Michael W., Bruce K., Tita, Sketchcraft, Kyle B., Darren P., Devin, and Titbout.
That's a new addition that came mid-recording, but Titbout.
We have Tita and Titbout.
Those are 2 different people.
And we want to thank both of them and the rest of everybody as well. And our other supporters also, thank you, everybody, for being a part of the show. And now that we've told you about our friends, we'd like you to do us a favor.
We want you to tell all your friends about us.